Hello, everyone. Mark Cabrera here, Samson Properties. Looking forward to working with you guys how to do effective marketing and prospecting. Today, we're going to be discussing certain elements of prospecting that you may or may not have heard before, but definitely just a reminder that what we could do with our business, especially when we have more information that you could apply towards how you interact with your clients or potential clients out there. So what is an effective marketing, right? It allows business to naturally flow to the service that you're trying to provide. So you could have all the skills and abilities, but it's rendered useless when no one knows about your business. So being able to market yourself and essentially prospect to people that you're meeting on a day-to-day basis makes a huge difference how your business is going to be and where it's going to end up. So we're going to be talking about that today, and I'll explain to you a little bit more about certain approaches that I've found that work for me and that work for my clients, work for my agents that I've actually mentored and coached. So hopefully this helps you as well. So if you're looking at success, 87% fail in the first 5 years, according to NAR, National Association of Realtors. And $15,300 is the average income of agents in the first 2 years of their business. So only 13% will succeed. So if you can imagine 100 people get their license, after 5 years, only 13 of them are left. So, and the ones that make it in the real estate business make an average around $43,000 across the United States. And the very successful ones make about $112,000. Anything over six-figure, pretty much, it's already considered successful as an agent. But if you really think about it, especially in our market area here in Maryland, D.C., Virginia, those statistics at 112 probably equates to about 12 to 15 transactions a year, which is, one every month on average that you're going to be finding that works for you. So when you're looking at it from niche or revenue stream, this is quite important right now when the market is changing, that you allow yourself to be able to actually do more things outside of what you're currently doing. Because when the market shifts in this type of environment where it from seller's market to a buyer's market, what you're going to find is that some of the niches are going to go away, and there's new niches that are actually going to come up to compensate for the difference of the market change. So when you're looking at it from different niches, you could be dealing with sellers, primarily listing properties. And those ways of being able to prospect those are sometimes, or a lot of times, from your center of influence and your past clients. Now, if you don't have any clients, really the easiest way to get listings is through the people you already know. And the reason why I bring this up is because we don't put enough emphasis on the idea that you can get clients from your current friends and family that you have. I've met some people out there that are working with certain buyers or certain buyers that came from their sphere of influence. But I've worked with agents that also tell me like, oh, none of my sphere of influence will ever send me referrals. Well, there's a reason behind that. It's because you need to get a better version of you. If your sphere of influence is not willing to send you referrals, it's probably because there's an issue that you need to deal with that creates a situation where some of the people around you may not trust you or may not like you. Even though you call them friends or you consider them friends, they really don't want to hang out with you. And if you're not a positive person, that's one of the reasons why. But there's also a lot of different things. So usually when I'm coaching and mentoring agents, I usually tell them that one of the things that we do to improve ourselves is personal development. And one of the books I highly recommend is the How to Win Friends and Influence People. And the reason why is because we forget the basics of kindness. We forget the basic of how we need to treat others and the way we interact with others, that we don't always have to respond like knee-jerk response to certain things. We have our intellect to be able to kind of choose the response we want to make or not respond at all. So it's very important for you to understand that your sphere of influence in the prospecting side of this is a major contributor to your success or whatever you're selling. So between your past clients and your referring, mastering the idea of being able to get people to refer business to you is even more powerful, because that's like an exponential you. So imagine if you're prospecting by yourself, you can produce a certain amount of result. But imagine if you have two friends, only even just two friends, prospecting on your behalf, all of a sudden your business is a completely different business. So I give you an example. One of my friends actually is a banker, and he's referred me and closed 26 transactions with him already. And that's one person. Imagine how many people you have in your database. Imagine all those people that you know that you can actually draw business from. So it's the importance of understanding that the people that already know you is the easiest people to get business from. It's a matter of figuring out exactly what is the driving factor or their motivation would be. Because if they got burned referring business to other people, they probably would be hesitant to refer you to other clients or friends that they know. So, but some people actually do, when you're niching towards a selling or listing properties primarily, some people do door-to-door, some people cold calls, cold calling, they do social media, they do mailings, that kind of stuff. Some people are really into mailings, like what's sold in the neighborhood, making them a market expert, having maybe even podcasts for that particular video, for the particular community. This is ways to actually prospect. And believe it or not, it's very effective. Even just being present on Facebook and being able to post on a regular basis, people know you're still there and you're still selling houses, you're still doing certain things. And once in a while, like a couple of days ago, I received a text message like, I want to buy a house, can you help me? I'm the daughter of so-and-so that you helped purchase a house like a couple of years ago. So it just pays to be out there, exposed, letting them know that you're still doing business, right? So that's one part on the listing side. Buyers, the same thing. It's a little bit more for me on the buyer side. There's a lot of ways to kind of get to that point. If you look at the number of people renting out there, there's a lot of renters out there not looking to buy properties. What people don't realize, the best way to get buyers is to influence people or inspire them to buy a home. To me, that's the easiest, because there's a lot of renters out there that you'll meet. If you go to a restaurant or a bar or a country club or whatever places that you go to, there's a lot of people that's still renting properties. And for you, the kind of way you can prospect to those people is to let them know what the benefits are of owning a property, right? To me, the biggest benefit is convenience, that you could do anything that you want in the interior of your house. If it's a single house with no HOA, you can even do a lot of different things on the exterior of the house that you don't have to ask permission because you own the property. But if you don't own the property, you still have to ask permission to actually do those things. So that's one of the things, one of the big benefits that I tell everybody that they should look into and make sure that, use that as a way for you to try to kind of get people excited about owning their own place. Another part, of course, being able to, on the long term, own a property and have the mortgage paid off and eventually have no rent, no mortgage, right? No monthly payments. This is another big one. I have a story to tell people about it. There's a couple came in one time in my office, and I sat down with them, and the wife was almost in tears because in 1968 they bought the same house that they've been renting to this day, and the owner that they sold the house to, they did a rent back, but they did a rent back in 1972, and they lived there until like 3 years ago. So can you imagine, over 30-something years, they were living on a property they could have owned and paid off, but yet they rented it. They sold it in 1972, and rented it back to the buyers that they sold it to for the next 35 years. And the buyer eventually said, after 35 years, hey, you want to sell the house? So then they had to move out and start over, and and still keep paying. And of course, that kind of mistake actually puts people to tears, because they could have owned the property all this time and no mortgage for many, many years. And they're like in their 60s and 70s at this point, retired, not making that much income. Now they have to go back and actually start paying rent or mortgage. So I helped them purchase a house this time. But of course, that I cannot correct that mistake that they had made. But more than anything, this is like a couple of things that you could be saying to people that are out there that are currently renting. Now, the people that currently own the house is usually a little bit more tricky, because you have to ask the right question. You have to kind of probe around and kind of look for the buttons, that hot buttons of a person. So you ask a lot of questions, figure out exactly what's missing, what they in their lives. Sometimes they will tell you that they don't have enough bedrooms or things like that. I had a situation one time where a client came to me and said to me, Mark, the 2-bedroom place that we're staying at it's not big enough for us, because we need a 3-bedroom at this point. But we can't afford to upgrade our home at this point. So I said, why is that? Well, because I don't know exactly how we can fit it on our budget. So I was like, okay, why don't you come in? My background happened to be in accounting, and I can actually sit down with you on a budget, and let's budget this thing out. And I was able to find like $400 to skim off of like everything that they were currently doing, that him and I agreed that this is something that they can get rid of. And after 6 months, basically, he came back and says, hey, Mark, I think we're ready to buy because of what we were able to do on our budget, and we can afford to purchase a home. So turned on, listed the property, sold the property. So you can create your opportunities. What people don't realize is one thing is to look for people that are ready to buy, but it's such a nice feeling for you to be able to actually inspire people to buy, or being able to inspire people to upgrade their current property that they own, right? So it doesn't always have to be that you go into a listing appointment and you have 5 other people trying to actually get that same listing because they called on an expired listing. They were doing expired listing just like everyone else. Or that person happened to call you and wanted to interview 3 other people that are agents in that area, and you have to compete with those 3 people to try to get the business. So when you're trying to get the best out of everything that you're trying to do, which is being able to get that listing, you're competing. But wouldn't it be nice to actually get the business without having to compete? That's actually much easier, isn't it? So this is the way I approach my business. So as much or as little business that I want, I can get based on the fact that I'm able to convince people that there's, or create a vision for them, that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, if that's an issue. Or if they're getting divorced, it's like, oh my gosh, this is horrible, but that's 3 transactions. I mean, that's the way I'm looking at it. I'm like, okay, this is a horrible thing, but at the same time, I can see 3 transactions, a listing and 2 potential sales, as long as we can get this whole separation agreement actually dealt with. But the other half of the time, I actually look at it from, okay, if I'm able to kind of get them to reconcile, but I'm not a marriage counselor or anything, but but also it helps too if the family ended up staying together, because they end up using you to purchase their next home, or their kids when they grow up, or their family members because you did something good. So it's important to understand the value proposition of our prospecting. Why would anyone want to work with you? And this is the next thing we're going to be talking about. But let's finish off with this niche that we're talking about, revenue stream, as I believe it is. And we're looking at banks as another one. Right now, in the next 12 to 14 months, I know the foreclosure market is going to increase. And I think the writing's on the wall. I've actually talked to some of my asset manager that I used to work with, and they're like, yeah, it's coming. For sure it's coming. 12 to 14 months, we're going to actually be inundated with foreclosure properties. Distressed sales, people are looking to sell their property because they're going through bankruptcy or estates or trust-ish scenario. Or they're, the easiest way to find it is go to the public record. 90 days before it forecloses, they announce it to everybody. And if you can get a hold of the seller and actually work with them, help them out, create a value proposition for them somehow or another. Sometimes I just even help these owners to actually keep their home, and I don't charge anything for it. And I usually ask them, how much does it cost for you to refer business to me? This is one of the good questions, actually. And they say nothing. Okay, great. Because that's what I'm charging you. I'm charging you nothing. And in exchange, if you could help me by referring me to the people that you hear that's looking to list or sell their property, it will help me a lot and help me stay in business. So I can help other people like you that are in trouble that can actually, that can get out of this mess. So that's another niche that you can get into. I personally did about probably close to 200 short sales between being a buyer and a listing agent on it. I done a bunch of short sales, and before nobody wanted to take them, but the reality of it is it's a good market niche. It's a good niche to get into because it allows you to be able to have a property on the market longer, which means you get more exposure to being able to get more buyers out of each listing. This is the way I look at it. And eventually it will sell anyway, most of the time. I sell most of my short sales. But it takes a longer time frame. But the longer time frame allows me to do open houses on it, be able to actually market it to other prospects, putting it in different media, advertising, and picks up more buyers out of it. So, I mean, sometimes it's not a bad thing to have a listing that stays long. It on this crazy market we just had, 6 months ago and before, you can imagine you pick up a listing, it's sold in a day or 2 days. I mean, what kind of buyers do you get out of it? It's easy, but if you sold it in a month, it's the same amount of money more than likely you get on the first day, on the last month, on the next month, or 3 months from now. It's just a matter of how much buyers can you get out of that marketing if you only sold the property on the first day or even the first week. There's not a lot of buyers that you can actually attract for that particular property. So it's a double-edged sword, I would say, on that part. But then again, it's a niche on the short sale side. It's a niche that, for me, allows me to actually make a difference in people's lives in a positive way. I mean, I just did one recently. He was expecting a short sale, but then the market was so good that he walked away with at least $8,000-$10,000 from it. He was like happy, So we started out with the whole idea that it was going to be a short sale. That was his expectation, but then I exceeded his expectation, and he walked away with some money. So it was like, this is great, thank you, And we sold it in 30, 45 days, which is, to me, still not enough time to get a lot of buyers out of it. But I was like, this is good, this works. And then you got vendor referrals. I don't know how some people survive in this business with what I see sometimes and how they treat their vendors. Of course, they're getting business from you. But if you treat them with kindness, the same vendor can refer business back to you. I had a home inspector referred me 7 clients that closed. And within that 7 clients, I was thinking to myself, wait a minute, I sent him a lot more. But then again, he works with a lot of agents too. So if you think about it, getting 7 referrals from a vendor that works with a lot of agents tells you a lot about how you presented yourself as a human being or as a person that can be trusted and that he can trust his name on it as well. So this is the importance of treating everybody with kindness, because sometimes we get to the point that we're doing so well and we think we're really doing so well, and then we meet somebody else and they're like, it's the craziest thing actually to me. At some point, when I meet people like, oh man, how do you make $300,000 a year, in the business? And I'm like, I've been in the business for a long time. I was making almost $920 a year at some point. but then I don't have a life, so I was looking at it from a balanced standpoint, because you could make whatever you want in this kind of business that we're in. Is the question is what you're willing to give up, because you always have a 24-hour time period. And if you're doing a lot of the work yourself, or you're actually as a buyer's agent working for another person, I've actually gone through it. I was with my mentor, or my team lead. I was with him for almost 7 years, right? I mean, I did very well as well. I made about probably around $300,000 in commission, but that's on a 50-50 split, okay? And everybody was telling me like, oh, at some point, like, how come you're not leaving that person? Well, because the prospecting is good in that. The marketing works. We get calls all the time, and I'm able to convert those calls into buyers, and I'm able to sell those buyers a property. And it just kept going and going and going. And the only reason why I had really left is because I ran out of time. Selling 60 houses in 1 year, and you're doing it yourself, and plus assisting the person with writing their contracts. My team leader writing his contracts, it was too much. I mean, so at some point, I did get a lot of experience, but then I came to a realization that, money is not something that the only thing that will drive you. There's the number one factor that you got to look at, which is the relationships that you currently have, the people that you love, the people you care about. You have to put those as priority, because you're just going to be one miserable person. And when you're miserable in this business, you're not going to do very well in the end, because nobody wants to be around miserable people. They want to be with positive, happy people as much as possible. So the principles of marketing and prospecting, you're looking at it from providing exceptional service. I don't know how much more to stress this, but I went to a restaurant like a week ago, and this one particular restaurant, I forgot how terrible their service was. And I show up at the same restaurant, and I started feeling the service. I was like, oh my gosh, this time I'm definitely not going to forget this one. It's so memorable. Well, anyway, put it this way. If you're going to have to work and do things for people, why not do it with kindness and smile, right? Why not actually do it with passion and compassion, and as well as empathy? Why not? Why? Because you're going to spend the same amount of time. Actually, as a matter of fact, you would spend less time if you are much nicer and kinder to people, and more empathetic and actually understanding of people's needs, because they're not going to constantly kind of poke at you, try to find out, okay, what's going on with this one? What's going on with this one? Because as long as you have people's trust, they don't question anything. The minute that you lose somebody's trust because you didn't provide a good service for some reason, everything is uphill. Coming to here, I'm about to ratify a contract, and one of my past clients actually gave me a confession. It's like, are you by yourself? I was like, yeah. And he says to me, hey, since you're by yourself, can I tell you something in confidence? So, yeah, sure. I bought a house with another agent. She's so embarrassed about that. Oh, really? Okay, all right. I'm not here to judge people, so I'll just, I just went along with it. I was like, okay, so you bought a house with another person? Okay, I understand. And she's like, but you know what? I'm settling tomorrow on that property that I bought because it was the wrong house. Okay, I can understand that also. And why would you want to work with me? That's my question. And she's like, Mark, you know what? I came to realize you've been honest with me with everything that you've done. And this agent only wanted me to buy this property the way he wanted to buy it. And he didn't tell me about the schools. He didn't tell me what, and when I come to find out all these things, I was so disgusted by it that I would not do business with him again. And I told him, I said, well, there's going to be agents like that. So I did the displace and replace method. So if you guys are not familiar with displace and replace is to actually displace all the other agents out there and replace it with you. You're the good guy. So that's basically the method I actually use. I was like, okay. See, the point I'm trying to make, I can react negatively. It's like, oh, why did you do that? You've been working together, blah, blah. That's a lot of the knee-jerk reaction we have when we are taught to be a certain way, right? But then when you actually have a scenario where you can control your emotions and provide the reaction that's proper, which means you're thinking and prescribing what the right behavior should be for me, because I can only control mine, I cannot control hers. It makes your character shine a lot more, and that in prospecting becomes really valuable, because now the person feels like, oh my gosh, this guy is above, he's above board in terms of his character, right? And that's what I'm actually trying to portray to her, that I'm actually a person that don't judge you based on your decisions, but will judge you based on your attitude. When I say judge you based on your attitude, you wouldn't even know I'm judging you, but if I don't want to be around you, you won't see me. That's plain and simple. But I don't have to explain to you why. I don't have to tell you how I feel, because at the end of the day, I always look at it from what is the end result of that relationship. If the relationship becomes worse by me saying something, then I just keep it hush-hush and just move along. Because I don't want that person to be bad-mouthing me later on if I actually, start reacting negatively and that person feels negative about me. And then later on talks about other people negatively about me. But if I actually stay above board or, in terms of my character, then it helps me on the prospecting side because I don't have to contradict everybody else's negative emotions. Which sometimes, if you've been in the marketplace for a long time or in a particular community for a long time, people talk about you. I guess it's a good thing for me. It might be a bad thing as well, because sometimes they talk negatively about you, right? So what I do in regards to that is to counter that. It's just to be who I am and be kind to every single person that I meet. And when people bad talk me, what ends up happening when I hear back from it, the person tells me like, Mark, I know you better. This is not who you are. So with me, I even told them, hey, you don't know anything about Mark. So the reason why they're doing this is because they know I had them understand my character. And within that persona that I actually project out there as someone who's not judgmental, who's very kind, who's actually appreciative of and have gratitude towards others, those are the things that creates a quality of a good person that can prospect and get more business. So when you walk into a room, even if you have a lot of agents out there competing with you, nobody's going to take your client because the person that you're going to prospect. Because once they got to talk to you and they get to like you, you get yourself differentiated from others. And that's the bottom line. It makes a big difference when you're paying attention to how you react to people when you're prospecting out there. Because I've seen where like a networking room of 15, 20 agents, and there's like literally like potential clients all over the place, right? And I end up getting most of the clients when I walk away from the room, realizing, okay, what was the difference? Well, the difference is years of personal development. That's really what the key element here, because I keep telling everyone, probably on every seminar, we don't sell houses here, guys. We sell us to be in between the transactions of houses. And the way we sell us in between is we provide value through that person or that client trusting us and knowing that we know our business very well and also that we care about them. And number two part is they like us. When people don't like you, it's so much harder to sell them anything, because all they're going to do is try to make it as difficult and hell for you as possible, because they feel like they're butting heads with you and they don't really appreciate you. So that to me is actually, one of the key elements in prospecting properly, is to make sure that you're developing yourself as a better person of yourself, if that makes sense. Be predictable to your clients. That's another thing. Predictability in the decisions you make or in the way you behave makes people more comfortable to be around you. If you look at the most unpredictable people out there, we call them borderline crazy or insane or out of this world because we don't know what they're going to do next. So that unpredictability is really a byproduct of that reaction that everybody else have around you, and people don't want to be around unpredictable people. I mean, we geared, I mean, naturally as human beings towards predictable people. So when you're prospecting and people can see exactly who you are in your character and the way you behave, the probability of that person becoming your client is going to be much greater. And again, being kind to everybody. And I'm talking by kind, like even if you're in a bad mood, when you get out there in the public and a door needs to be open the door to someone if you have to. Because believe it or not, I've picked up clients actually just literally opening the door or holding the elevator because there's not enough of those out there nowadays. People are just on their own, like thinking like, they own the world. And having that amount of kindness actually makes a big difference. I was showing a house the other day, and there was a seller actually sitting on the parking lot, and I came up to him. It's like, and the first thing I said to him, it's like, sir, would you happen to be the owner of this place? He said, yes. Oh, my client's running 6 minutes behind. I do apologize. I don't want to keep you waiting here, but if it's more comfortable for you to sit inside, go right ahead. I don't want you to actually feel like you're going to get inconvenienced. And he's like, oh, yeah, sure, thank you. So like a few minutes later, he walked up to my car and said, you're one of the nicer agents that I've actually met out here. Would you mind if I get your business card? I was like, sure. I mean, as I happened to be in the car, reached over in my glove compartment and, gave him my business card. Mind you, of course, I'm not trying to pick up that listing, but then again, at the same time, when that transaction is over, right, or the listing agreement or listing agreement he has with that listing agent, who do you think he's going to call, right? And the reason why is because of that nice, simple gesture and also the way I spoke to him and the humility that came with the way I spoke to him. So it's the body language, not just the words, right? It goes with everything else. And to me, it doesn't cost me much of anything to do that, right? To be polite, to be nice, to be kind. It doesn't take much more time as me being rude. Actually, sometimes it takes more energy to be rude than to be nice. Because when you're nice, you just move along, right? And people actually, it's the funniest thing. I get so many things for free. I've gotten free tickets before to somewhere. I've gotten free merchandise. Like I came up to this one person, very nice, in a bike shop. I was asking for this one particular spring that was missing on my bike. I came up to him and very nice, excuse me, sir, just trying to see if you could help me and figure out this thing, And he came up to me and he's like, yeah, sure. Here, why don't you just replace it with this? I'm not charging you anything. Oh, and also here's a water bottle. You can take it. I was like, and my friend was sitting next to me. She's like, what about me? I was like, oh yeah, sure. She give another water bottle to her. And I was like, okay, thank you so much. And she walked out. When we were walking away, she's like, man, what did you do with that guy, I mean, he's supposed to, that's like $35 item. He just gave it to you for free. Well, maybe because some people walk in there, right? And he doesn't get enough people that are actually really nice and kind to him, right? That happens. And that in itself actually opens doors for people to be able to be prospected, for you to be able to try to be part of their lives in buying or selling their property. I mean, it opens up a whole different areas that you never thought it was even there. Just like one of these bankruptcy attorneys that I actually met at a party. I mean, it was a party of a lot of agents, right? And a lot of attorneys. And at the end of the party, he sends me clients, and I told him, I was like, but you met a lot of agents that day. And he's like, well, I kind of like you. I think I have to actually put my name on anybody that I would refer to anyone. And I think I can put my name on you. So improving your personality, improving your way of approach to people to me, is the biggest prospecting mechanism or skill that you could ever get. But it takes years to develop that, right? Or it takes months if you read a lot of books and you start applying these books to the way you handle yourself and you carry yourself. So I don't usually read books one or twice. I usually read the same book like 5, 10, 15 times because I want to internalize the book if I happen to like it and I can see how I can improve myself as a human being. So, the version 2.0 really helps on that part. So on the next slide, let me just, there you go. So what effective marketing looks like or effective prospecting would look like is value, motivation, differentiation. Those are the 3 reasons why someone would want to work with you. 1 is, are you providing value? 2, are they motivated enough to do something? And especially if you're the one who motivated them, right? And 3, are you differentiated enough between one agent to the other they happen to know? Because if you think about it, every 4 doors that you knock, someone was going to be a real estate agent. That's how many real estate agents out there. I think there's close to 2 million real estate agents in America. That's a lot of agents, okay? And out of that, basically, what makes you any different? And the same thing, is the same idea is what makes me any different. So a person that's been in the business for about 6, 7 years, hasn't sold a house, and really hasn't really done anything else with her real estate license, came up to me one day and said to me, I was referred to you, but what makes you any different than 3 other brokers I already work with? That's the first question she asked me. Very direct, very upfront. What makes you any different? And my response to her was very simple. What makes me different is I don't work on your skills. I work on your personality. Because your personality is what sells. Your skills, everybody's got. So if you're really thinking about prospecting, what makes you any different is how you approach your listing appointment when they're interviewing 5 other listing agents out there, right? I pick up the listing probably almost 60, 70% of the time when I'm competing with 4 or 5 other agents. What makes me any different is the fact that when I go out there on a listing appointment, I sit down with the client, not focus on my presentation, but more focus on finding out what their needs are. And based on their needs, I create my presentation through our conversation. So what I do is I present everything to them. This is my background, this is what I've done, right? And this is the property values of your house. Based on, as a matter of fact, I happen to have access through my lender, like evaluation, that breaks it down to 10 pages with graphs and all the nice bells and whistles of 10 properties in the neighborhood most of the time, and breaks it down in terms of what the value of the property is already. And it's coming from a bank, not coming from me. So it's even nicer. So that's what differentiates me amongst other agents who are doing their own comps, right? Because I tell them, hey, this is coming from the bank. It's not an appraisal. But the idea that I'm bringing something of a third-party opinion of what their valuation is kind of makes it a little bit more credible than me actually coming up with it myself, right? Does that make sense? Because if I'm coming up with it myself, I could be manipulating those numbers to actually get what I want out of that property. There's in the back of people's mind, believe it or not, that stuff come up, right? I eliminate all that and I give them that. And I give them all my resume, my reviews, my number of houses I've sold and everything before I even walk in. Why? Because I don't want to focus on that. And more than likely, a lot of times they read through it because they want to know who they're going to meet, right? If it's even worthwhile for them to meet. So when I get there, I know I have certain credibility already built up based on what I've sent them. Now when I'm there, how am I different than everybody else? Well, my presentation is about them. Why are you trying to sell the house? What is important, most important out of these things when you're actually sitting down with your listing agent? If you have experience in the past with listing agents, what you didn't like about those agents. So then when I know that information, now I can, again, displace the rest of the agents that I'm competing with and replace what I'm going to be doing with them. So it's more customized to each individual person. And also you got to understand what type of personality you're dealing with. On any given scenario, I look at 4 personality types on listing appointments. I try to figure out if they're analytical, if they're emotional, if they're more of an extroverted person or an introverted person. The reason why is I have to mirror to a certain degree how they behave and how I would behave. Because I want them as comfortable as possible with me. In order for me to do that, I need to be able to actually figure out what type of personality they are. Otherwise, I will lose them. Because if they're an extrovert and they're all over the place, right? You want to be able to actually kind of refocus them on what you're trying to accomplish. But at the same time, not turn them off with all the details to the point that they're sitting down like bored to death and not just literally tuning you out. Or the other way around, if the person is very conscientious and you did not even bring a presentation with you, which I normally would bring a presentation, just in case the person is a detail-oriented person and I have it nicely neat and everything is like, as perfect as I can possibly have it. Because of course, when you do this often enough, you can actually perfect your presentation. But the point I'm trying to make is looking at it from their personality, what makes them tick, what makes them feel like they would want to work with you. So a lot of agents don't pay attention to this. They come in there thinking like, okay, this person's going to listen to me and I'm going to present it the same way as I presented to the last person. Well, it doesn't work very well that way if you don't customize it to that person and that person's way of thinking. So understanding the other person's way of thinking makes a big difference whether or not you're going to get that listing. And when you connect, you get that listing. So effective marketing, value. What's the value in your relationship? That's actually in the relationship. One of the values that people actually have why they wouldn't want to work with you is because you got a good relationship with them. That's a value, okay? Listening skills. This is one of the for extroverted people like me, this is the hardest thing to do, right? So I have to actually really pay attention, making sure I'm actually listening to the person and allowing them a chance to be able to express themselves, talk to them. So a lot of times when I come into a listing presentation, I come in there with questions rather than answers. The only time I'll give answers is I was asked a question, right? But outside of that, it's more questions. So it allows 70% of the communication to be seller actually talking, agent talking 30% of the time. And then sound advice. Sound advice is amazing, actually. If a person knows that you know what you're doing and you give them very sound advice, they'll keep coming back, like this client that I'm working with right now. She came back to me not because the other agent messed up, but at the same time, she could have chosen another agent as well. She came back to me because I always gave her sound advice, and that's one of the things that she realized that she would not work with anyone else is because I've always given her as much information as I can to make sure that she can make good decisions. So the sound advice is actually a value that you actually bring out there. Referral of experts. If you have people, I put it this way. With the clients that I currently have, I get calls at least once a week asking me if I know any attorneys, accountants, and I have an arsenal of people on my list. Why? Because that's a value you bring to people when you're a resource to them. Because when the time comes they want to buy a house, they'll always come up to you more than likely because they want to reciprocate what you've provided them, which is value. The value is resources. So every time they need something, they need a plumber, they call me. They need an electrician, they call me. They don't call an electrician or look at the Google. You can easily Google anybody, right? But they call me because the value I provide to them is the expertise and the relationships I have with other people. So it's the network that I have. And I make sure they're aware that I have a huge network of people, of experts in many different areas, because then I'll be their go-to person. Physical help. Once in a while, I actually help people move, believe it or not. I mean, I help them pack their stuff and move the things, because I get to know them, especially if they know a lot of people. They will more than likely refer me to others because they feel like, oh my gosh, I owed Mark this. I only got him a pizza for lunch, or didn't even give me anything for actually to help out. So sometimes I help out on moving and like being able to actually help them with certain things that they need physically, like if they need to go somewhere and they didn't have a ride or something. Sometimes my client calls me, is like, hey Mark, what's going on with my car broke down? Can you help me get gas because I ran out of gas? Sure, if I happen to be available, I do it. Why not? And introduction to other people. Sometimes people actually don't have work. Introduce them to a business owner, and it clicks. They end up working together. Great, So invitation to events, that's another thing. And being thoughtful to others. Here's the thing about being thoughtful to others. I automate that because there's so many people I need to be thoughtful to. And I cannot think of everybody. So I actually create an automation. KV Core is perfect for that kind of stuff, where you can automate your texts on a regular basis that they're going to get text message from you once in a while. I invite them to my events. I usually have events at least 4 times a year so that I'm in touch with everybody, even though I don't get to talk to them every single time. But, I call them, I text them, I do a mass text to them, and I also email them once in a while when there's events coming up. So that's the value proposition side of it. Now, the motivation is planting a seed. This is like giving them ideas of what could be or what they can do. And I think that makes a huge difference when people cannot think for themselves sometimes because they're busy on the rat race of actually working, and they really don't see what the future looks like. And I meet people once in a while like that, and I give them a better idea of how it could be better for them in the long run. Just like what I did with those people I made a budget for to actually be able to create that opportunity for them to upgrade their home. Or if they don't have a house, you can push and pull different things. The way I look at it, motivation is consisting of 2 things. It's very, very simple. It's pleasure and it's pain. Those are the 2 things that motivate people. If you can figure out what their pleasure point is or what their pain point are, you know that you can motivate that person. But that's through the relationship that you build or the conversations that you have with those people. That's what makes a difference. So creating a vision is very important in our business. If you don't do enough of that, you're probably missing almost 50% of your business. Implementing a plan, this is another thing. Some people actually love to plan things, but it takes many, many years or never happens, right? So what I do is I do a planning session with some people that don't own a property yet, or own the property, but don't know whether or not they want to sell the house, right? So I tell them, don't worry about selling the house. Why don't we go and sit down and do a planning session? It does 2 things. One, the planning session allows me to get closer to them and get more involved in what they're trying to do in the real estate side. And number 2, that planning session it creates that bond that is necessary for me later on when they decide to sell the property, that they won't be interviewing any other agents because I was the one who actually planned out everything for them. So if there's something missing, they're not sure about something, I'm the one they'll be coming up to and asking, what about the plan that we did in this one? What do we do next, right? So I've become essentially an expert for them. And then the next thing is, right, understanding their current circumstances. The clients that we have out there, I don't know how much more I can stress this, but understanding where they are is more important than trying to sell them something. And that's basically what we have a tendency to do. There's a theory that if you're actually a hammer, you might think everybody's a nail. Well, it doesn't work like this. if you want to be effective in prospecting in the real estate side of it. Because if you understand people's current circumstance, you can give them much better sound advice, number one. But number two, they might not be the one also buying the house sometimes. They might have other people that they know. And by them understanding that you understand them, that they are more freely to feel that you will represent them very well if they refer you to the next person. So being positive and excited, it's natural, it's normal that you will actually get other people infected with that. Positivity is a very infectious thing. So when you're positive around people, people around you tend to be positive most of the time. And it's a natural phenomenon, because if you actually have a 4-month-old, like I do, I have a 4-month-old baby, you smile at that baby, the baby will smile back at you. Baby doesn't know. But that's the power of positivity and the smiling part and the happiness part. But if you're miserable, that same baby can feel your misery. That's the basic instinctual thing that we all have. As we grow up, it actually gets more intellectual, but some of us never grow up, unfortunately. And it's kind of interesting. I look at people and I get to see where they are in their maturity range. I mean, I have like some of my relatives are actually much older than me. They're like in their 60s, 70s. And I'm looking at them, I'm like, oh my gosh, this person's a teenager. Because there's so much drama in their life. And they create so much drama in their life, and it's unnecessary drama. So if by understanding where people are in terms of their emotional stability, emotional standpoint, you can better judge exactly how you're going to speak to them. So I had this one client who was like 65, 68 years old. And I had one of my agents quit on me, one of my loan officers quit on me because of this person. And I ended up working with this person. And what I came to realize, this person is a 7-year-old kid trapped on a 65-year-old guy. So I was like, okay, let me treat him like he's my son. Let me talk to him like the way I talk to my 7-year-old kid, right? Oh man, it worked so well after settlement. The guy was actually sending me, hey, this is what I did to the house. What do you think? And I said, oh, that looks great. That looks great, but I think you missed this one and this one. I talked to him like I'm his dad. You may want to actually fix this thing because it doesn't look right, So, and then he starts sending me these things, and it's like, what's your opinion? What do you think I should, if I had to resell this house, how much do you think I should sell it for? I'm like, okay. But the point I'm trying to make is our communication was changed based on the way I was looking at him and what age I needed to talk to him at. So understanding a person's, they call it emotional quotient, understanding where they are in their emotional quotient, where their ability to receive and how you speak to them emotionally makes a huge difference in how you will connect with that person. So when you're trying to prospect for business, if you know the psychology that goes along with how you talk to people, your likelihood of success will be much greater than any agents out there, because not a lot of agents focus on psychology. And the ones who come from psychology background, believe it or not, most of them do well, because they can actually tell and see exactly where the missing pieces are, and figuring out, okay, this is the way I'm going to talk to this person, or this is the way I'm going to interact with this person, or this is the way I'm going to respond to this person. And like I said to you, knowing the concept of pleasure and pain, which I just discussed earlier, this is basically the basic of motivation. Something's, if it's not painful enough, you didn't remind them enough. That's the problem. Some people forget how painful it is, when you don't do certain things, and then at the end you have to do it, then you have to do a lot more than you normally would have done. Like paying your IRS taxes. I mean, you don't pay your taxes, the interest will bite you in the butt, and trying to figure out now how to actually catch up, right? I mean, it's as simple as those kind of things. So when a person doesn't own a house and they're planning on living in a particular area the next 3 to 5 years, just paint them a picture of how painful it is when the property values go up and you don't own anything, right? And picture a scenario where, you're paying mortgage every single month. At least it's actually going into some type of almost like a savings account over a long period of time, because eventually you pay off your mortgage, right? So that's the pleasure. And then you look at the pain, right? I mean, like someone, like one of the tenants thinking about painting painting the wall red, and one of the things is like, man, don't you wish you owned this house? I mean, that kind of thing, like it's, even if it's a jokingly type scenario, I'm pushing his pain button, right? And that's what you got to learn how to do, because overall, eventually, that person will start, the seed is going to start to grow into a tree, and they're the ones who are going to come up to you and say, hey, I got an idea. Why don't we buy a house? I had a scenario actually one time. The client a year ago, should I sell my house? And my answer to her, where are you going to move to? Well, if I sold my house, I could get a lot of money for it, right? So yeah. But then when I buy a house, then I have to pay a lot of money for that, right? So yeah. But I have a better idea for you, and you can think about this. What if you sell the house now, rent for 3 years, since your ultimate plan is to move to Florida, and then wait for the market to crash 3 years from now? I'm pretty sure we're going to be closer to that point, and then go buy yourself a house. Because she wasn't really sure if she wants to buy, because if she sells, then she has to buy, right? I was like, you don't have to buy. Let's just sell. So that's what she did. 6 months later, she calls me up. I was like, Mark, I want to buy a house in Florida already. I'm like, just be patient. Wait another 6 months. But understand something. I'm in the business of selling houses, right? But yet, I'm giving her sound advice, because that's the value proposition I provided to her. Well, 6 months later, market's changing. Florida's market is changing. Houses are staying longer. Property's starting to drop. And she's like, Mark, you're so right. This was going to happen. I was like, yeah, anything that gets overly hot and overly inflated eventually will have to come down, right? I mean, the law of what goes up must come down. I mean, law of gravity. So this is exactly what we are. So she loved it so much that her son actually ended up selling his house. And now his daughter is selling her house in Florida before the market crashes, and wants to buy a house here after she stays for 6 months to a year with her mom's house that her mom's renting. To me, everything works. Why? Because it's not about the selling part, it's about taking care of the client, right? And that's what you want to do. You're not out there just to sell, you're out there to make a difference in people's lives. And when you do that, you have 10 folds of referrals that comes at you. Like those 86 families that I actually did a modification for free. All of them got to keep their home. And all of those people, I told them, hey, listen, how do I pay you? Pay me in referrals. This is how you're going to pay me. Why? Because not enough money will ever come in whatever they want to pay me, because they're broke to begin with, right? So if they can afford $2,000, that's not as good as them referring me a transaction that's worth $10,000 in commission, right? So I'm like, shoot, just refer me clients. How much does it cost you to do that, right? So that's the reason why that came about. But that, to this day, that same people that I help, they're still bringing business to me. And people tell me like, oh, you have it so easy because you have it established. Of course. But to establish something, don't you have to do work as well? To reap something in the spring, if you're a farmer, don't you need to actually plant those seeds? Don't you need to actually fertilize the ground? Don't you need to actually, make sure passes a certain amount of time for those crops to grow? It's the same thing with real estate. There's people out there that are what we call hunters, right? They just hunt and close deals. Great. But the minute the hunting actually, there's not enough deers out there to actually hunt, you're just going to starve. But the people who know how to plant will always have a harvest. This is the whole idea behind it, whether if it's corn, and that's why they sometimes alternate the different crops that they actually grow, and they know that. So differentiation, areas of strength. Now here's the thing with that. You look at the areas of your strength and be better at it. Because not going to be a lot of people out there that will be better at the strength that you're already good at. So if you're already good at something, right, be the best at that. The ones that you're not good at, don't bother trying to actually get better at it. try to figure out who you can partner with to actually compensate for that. That's why sometimes we actually get a team leader to actually kind of push us through, because that team leader might be good at something that you're not. And it's vice versa. That team leader might not be good at something or might not have the time for something that you do. So it complements each other, and you actually have a good symbiotic relationship that creates a lot of business for both people. And that's what I had for 7 years with my mentor, my coach, or what you call my team lead. I mean, he was, at some point, I guess he was actually $2.6 million in commission in 1 year. I mean, he got that insane. But at the same time, the way I look at it, in order for you to create a certain amount of success, you have to understand everybody around you also would need to succeed, because that's the feed off. You feed off of each other. So if there's no food to feed off of, then everybody's hungry, right? So areas of other agents' weaknesses, that's where you displace people. Because there's a lot of agents out there, if they're new. I mean, I usually tell them, I mean, if you're new in this business and you have to compete with 4 other agents that are actually experienced in the business, it's harder for you to get that listing. So it's good to have a team lead or a partner that's actually more experienced than you that can possibly help you push through. So 50% is better than 0, right? So it's always looking at it from that. Displace and replace, I gave you that concept, okay? Express services provided. It's one thing for you to have it on your presentation, is another thing for you to be able to tell and show results to the people that you get to talk to. So if they can see that you've done it for other people, then more than likely they'll be able to trust you that you can do it for them. And then provide success stories with other clients. So with me, as you notice, I tell you examples of some of my clients that I work with. Well, when I sit down with a listing agent, a seller, I tell them how I was able to sell properties for my seller that's different than what other people were able to do. An example of that is I picked up a listing one time. Property's been on the market. It was an expired listing. One of my agents called, brought me out there, and we were competing with 4 other agents. And we ended up getting the listing because one of the things I mentioned to them, you have a 3-bedroom, 1-bath single house here. It's harder for anyone to sell that rather than actually making this closet into a bathroom and putting a provision, a certain amount of money into this bathroom, drawing it out in terms of how the bathroom is going to look like, getting an estimate, which I can do. I can get an estimate for that work, and you can give them credit for that amount, and then get that bathroom done for that person. So then now it's 3-bedroom, 2 baths you're marketing. Nobody gave that idea to them, right? So that's what differentiated us from the rest of the other agents, and that seller ended up selling that house and buying another property with us, and then referred the sister who also bought a house with us. So that's the result of being able to provide examples, being able to provide results, and being able to kind of come up with ideas of how you actually be different than everybody else. So, yourself in the past, okay, how you will go through the process of prospecting is you need to develop your own skills. I think I don't know how much more I can reiterate this, but personal development to me should be on a daily basis. I mean, even 30 minutes of your time should be devoted to personal development, because that's how important it is for you to develop you. So for those who are just starting out in the business, what I can tell you, the marketing has to be complete, but you got to start with you. So if you got $0 that you're making in the business, then you should have $0 for marketing, unless you want to spend money on your full-time job or get a full-time job or have a lot of savings and use it for marketing, great. But you have to market you. So when you start making a little bit of money, work on personal development. And then when you have more money, then you can start working on the marketing. Because you want to market a complete you. When I say complete you, of understanding how to speak to people a certain way, how to speak to them with confidence, how to treat them the right way, how to actually interact with people. And if you can develop that in a way where you can attract people, it's much easier to market that way. You could be marketing anywhere you're walking into. You can go to the mall and literally sell a house to somebody there. I sold a house to a Verizon consultant who walked into my office. I mean, I was the first one he was able to talk to all day because nobody wanted to talk to him. So I started talking to him. Next thing you know, I sold him a house. Understanding who your competitors are within your particular market segment. So you want to compete with others that are on the same level as you. So if somebody out there that actually picked up 60% of the marketplace, that's not your market segment. I have seen teams that actually like inundate a particular area and that's all they're focusing on. If I were to go in there, I'll be wasting a lot of my marketing to compete to get to the level where they are if they've been doing this for many years, right? I need to pick a market where it's not being picked on or somebody just retired from that particular market. It makes more sense. So, and then key agents in the area of your market, understanding who controls the particular market segment. Because those same people are going to be the ones selling, and if you have a buyer, if you know those people, you have a better chance of selling. So I don't look at agents as competitors or like, some people say like, you're on my turf. Well, that's like, to me, like, I think we're on each other's turf, therefore we are colleagues, right? So that's the way I always look at that because it's very important to understand the psychology behind friendships within each agent. I'm actually ratifying a contract today. I called the agents like, hey, Jane, this is Mark. Oh my gosh, Mark, how are you? Da-da-da-da-da. He got any offers on that house? I got 3 offers, including yours. Oh, okay, great. But I think we can ratify this, right? I mean, that's how it went. I swear to you, I didn't have to say anything, okay? I was like, yeah, of course we can ratify this, So she came back with a counter and ratifying the contract, right? That's the importance of that relationship. Can you imagine that? I mean, I'm ratifying contracts when I'm competing, but it didn't matter what my offer is. It's because they know me. I can actually push the transaction through, and we've done work together before. Or I've actually treated her very well in the past, and even if we didn't go through a transaction together properly, we still became friends. I mean, I had situations. Actually, somebody here at Samson that actually works at Samson, to this day, we're still friends. And our transaction that we actually worked with didn't even go through. At settlement, my buyer walked away from his seller. And instead of being upset at each other, we were actually talking very professional with each other. And we liked each other. He ended up working with me, and I ended up working with him. So the bottom line is you just don't know who you're going to end up with out here in this marketplace. So the moral of the story is every single agent that's out there, if you can get on their good side, that's great. Why? In 2008 market crash, I picked up 8 listings from 8 agents that are getting out of the business. It's beautiful. I think we're going to have another one of those at some point. And if agents can trust you and they like you, they will refer the business to you. They take a full-time job and you pick up a listing. It's beautiful. So today, it's important to be present, be relevant, and add value. This is from Nick Bezos from, LinkedIn, that former vice president of marketing there. So be present, be relevant, and add value. And that's essentially what we're doing when we're prospecting. We need to be present, we need to be relevant, and we need to add value. So thank you so much for participating. If you actually saw this, I'm very glad that I'm here at Samson, and Samson is a wonderful company to work with for sure.